Has Disney's shimmering crown finally lost its luster? Once upon a time, actually just a short while ago, the live-action remake of Snow White was set to dazzle audiences with a modern reimagining of the classic fairy tale. Rachel Zegler, a rising star lauded for her talent, was cast as the princess at the center of it all. Many assumed this project would follow in the profitable footsteps of earlier live-action hits like Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella. Instead, controversy has snowballed into a full-blown crisis, box office catastrophe, fan backlash, political friction, and behind-the-scenes drama. In a perfect twist of irony, the story meant to enthrall us with happily ever after magic has instead become one of Hollywood's most talked about cautionary tales. So, what went wrong? How did a single production spark such outrage? From Rachel Zegler's inflammatory remarks about the original film, to Disney's rumored missteps with the Seven Dwarfs, and why has this fiasco now led Disney to freeze or rethink other upcoming live-action ventures, including a highly anticipated Tangled adaptation? Grab a seat, because this deep dive reveals how one of the most iconic stories ever told imploded right before our eyes. And trust me, there is no shortage of drama when Disney announced its grand plans to remake Snow White, the very first Disney princess story that kickstarted the studio's global fame back in 1937. Excitement ran high. After all, reviving a classic princess for the modern era had worked. Wonders for the box office before. Beauty and the Beast soared to over $1 billion worldwide, and even more recent efforts like Aladdin had turned significant profits. The formula seemed bulletproof. Take a beloved animated story, add A-list stars, push the budget to lavish extremes, and watch the crowds flock to theaters. This time around, they spared no expense. Insiders estimated a production budget creeping well above $200 million, ballooning to $250 million when factoring in reshoots, CGI, sets, and star salaries. Gal Gadot, famously known as Wonder Woman, signed on to play the evil queen, a casting choice that alone sparked huge online buzz. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler, fresh from her breakout role in West Side Story, was tapped to don the iconic red headband and blue bodice as Snow White herself. On the surface, it had all the makings of a triumphant spectacle. Disney teased a more progressive spin on the original narrative. Gone was the passive princess who simply cleans for dwarfs and waits for a prince. In came a bold, self-reliant Snow White, who, rumor had it, might yearn for something beyond just true love. Fans initially applauded the move, anticipating a princess who'd reflect 21st century values without necessarily discarding the fairy tale essence. Yet, in an industry where hype can turn sour overnight, the first cracks appeared the moment casting details leaked onto the internet. Rachel Zegler's selection as Snow White set off a wave of online chatter. While some people welcomed a fresh face and a Latin American actress to portray the iconic fair-skinned princess, others responded with skepticism, claiming the casting missed the traditional look that had long been associated with Snow White. This debate alone could have lit a small spark of controversy. But what truly fueled the inferno were Zegler's own social media posts. In a now infamous tweet, she addressed critics head-on, sarcastically implying they wanted her to bleach her skin. The language was brash, direct, and anything but apologetic. Overnight, she wasn't just the talented actress with a golden voice. She was a lightning rod for debates on diversity, authenticity, and respect for classic Disney imagery. On top of that, she made scathing remarks about the original 1937 film, labeling certain plot points weird, especially regarding the prince and his perceived fixation on Snow White. Many fans of the classic animated masterpiece felt personally attacked, as though Zegler was tearing down a cherished childhood memory. That sense of personal offense spread like wildfire. Memes, tweets, and YouTube videos criticized Zegler's attitude. Some accused her of mocking or belittling a legacy film that had introduced a new era of animation. Indeed, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was more than just a fairy tale in 1937. It was an unprecedented technical and artistic achievement spearheaded by Walt Disney himself, heralded for decades as a groundbreaking piece of cinema history. Dismissing it as weird, in the eyes of many devotees, was akin to mocking the very foundation upon which the Disney empire was built. Still, defenders applauded Zegler's frankness. They pointed out that the original Snow White contained antiquated elements, from the passive heroine to a prince with minimal backstory. They insisted a modern Disney princess deserves depth, agency, and an updated perspective. Unfortunately, the nuance of that argument often got lost amid the heated bickering online, and the public image of Rachel Zegler's Snow White tilted more toward actress with too much attitude than empowering princess for a new generation. As the social media drama ballooned, another issue emerged: politics. While many celebrities today openly share their political views, it's typically a risky move for someone anchoring a massive Disney film. The Mouse House is famously meticulous about safeguarding its all-ages brand. Historically, the studio has prided itself on universal appeal, steering clear of hot-button issues so families worldwide can enjoy their films without controversy. Then came rumors that Rachel Zegler's commentary touched on sensitive global issues. Some of her statements reportedly clashed with co-star Gal Gadot's perspectives, given Gadot's ties to Israel and past military service. Behind-the-scenes whispers claimed Disney executives grew extremely nervous about how these conflicting stances could overshadow the film's promotional cycle. According to some insiders, top brass arranged private meetings urging Zegler to temper her political commentary, or at the very least, frame it more carefully. Yet Zegler seemed resolute. She wasn't keen on self-censoring for the sake of Aishai, studio's squeaky clean image, which arguably aligned with the new brand of princess she was meant to portray: outspoken, independent, unafraid. Unfortunately, that resolute stance also meant bracing for an onslaught of public backlash. Disney, for its part, allegedly brought on additional PR managers and even boosted security to shield both actresses from potential public hostility. All this tension may have been overshadowed had the film itself triumphed, but as later events proved, that victory never materialized. While casting and politics simmered in the background, a second firestorm erupted over something deeply woven into the core of the original story: the Seven Dwarfs. In the 1937 classic, each dwarf, Doc, grumpy, happy, sleepy, bashful, sneezy, and dopey, was given a distinct personality. Their significance is so iconic that the Seven Dwarfs are practically as famous as Snow White herself. So when rumors leaked that Disney planned to partially CGI these characters, rather than cast 7 actors with dwarfism, the backlash was fierce. Actor Peter Dinklage, best known as Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones, and a vocal advocate for dwarfism representation, slammed the decision as backwards. He questioned how Disney could promote itself as progressive, particularly with a newly empowered Snow White, while ignoring a prime chance to hire multiple dwarf actors. Fans online echoed his sentiments, calling the approach a major missed opportunity. Some also accused Disney of effectively erasing the comedic camaraderie that made the dwarfs so beloved in the original. In response, Disney claimed it had consulted with representatives of the dwarfism community and was mindful of modern sensitivities, but the damage was already done. Critics argued that by not giving these roles to actors with dwarfism, Disney had inadvertently belittled an entire demographic's chance at major screen time in a high-profile film. The entire fiasco became yet another negative talking point, overshadowing any positive spin the studio might have hoped to put on the film's modernization. By the time Snow White finally premiered, public interest had shifted from the film's story to its controversies. The question wasn't, how does the new Snow White compare to the classic? But rather, how badly will it flop opening? Weekend numbers confirmed the worst. For a production rumored to have cost in the ballpark of $250 million, when you include extensive CGI, multiple rounds of reshoots, marketing, and star salaries, the initial take was shockingly meager. Analysts who had predicted at least a moderate opening were stunned. The film didn't just underperform, it borderline crashed. Social media blew up with anecdotal evidence. Users posted photos of half-empty theaters, even during Prime Weekend showings. In some major cities known for their vibrant movie-going culture, screenings were reportedly canceled due to low attendance. Others circulated seating charts revealing that not even discounted tickets could fill the seats. Suddenly, the conversation spiraled into relentless mockery. Memes, snarky TikToks, and blunt tweets poured in, labeling Snow White everything from Disney's biggest embarrassment to an expensive cautionary tale about ignoring your fan base. Influential voices like podcaster Joe Rogan weighed in questioning how a studio as seasoned as Disney could pour hundreds of millions into a feature without ensuring its lead star was fully prepped to navigate publicity landmines. Comedian Chrissy Meyer amplified the issue by sharing snapshots from an almost deserted IMAX theater. adding to the swirl of negative buzz. Adding insult to injury, rumors flew that Disney quietly pulled the film from certain international markets rather than let it limp along. Some speculated that by trimming or delaying its release in specific territories, Disney hoped to minimize the worldwide humiliation that came with daily updates about the film's dismal performance. Meanwhile, detractors seized on every empty seat photo as proof that the audience had outright rejected the film, and more specifically, Rachel Zegler's portrayal of the beloved heroine. Amid the wreckage, Rachel Zegler found herself the face of a failing film, and also the target of vehement online outrage. In interviews leading up to, and shortly after the premiere, she tried to set the record straight. She claimed her critiques of the 1937 story were never meant to undermine the entire legacy or dismiss fans' nostalgia. Instead, she emphasized that her remarks were taken out of context in an era where sensational headlines dominate. She expressed genuine sadness at seeing so many people interpret her commentary as an attack on romance, tradition, and fairy tales themselves. Yet the damage was done. For some fans, her earlier statements, saying the prince was basically a stalker and characterizing the original story as weird, were too glaring to ignore. Critics on social media insisted she was simply backtracking to salvage her public image. Meanwhile, a fraction of the audience leapt to her defense, pointing out the film's failure shouldn't rest solely on one young actress's shoulders. After all, Zegler hadn't greenlit the massive budget, orchestrated the CGI dwarfs, or mandated the marketing. She was a performer hired to bring a new angle to a classic character, a job that inevitably comes with critics and fans scrutinizing every word. Podcasters like Kurt Metzger argued that Disney's leadership, not the actress, deserved the bulk of the blame. They pointed out how the studio, in a rush to appear modern, ended up alienating a large part of its loyal fan base by ignoring long-standing traditions that made these classic movies so treasured. The entire fiasco mirrored a broader sentiment in Hollywood. Big studios sometimes fixate on buzzwords like progressive or woke marketing, only to fumble the execution so badly that they wind up angering both traditionalists and the Aizawa, more forward-thinking fans. For Rachel Zegler personally, the entire ordeal served as a baptism by fire. Just a couple of years before, she was an emerging star, beloved for her role as Maria in West Side Story, receiving praise for her vocal ability and acting range. Suddenly, she found herself at the center of a swirl of controversies. Everything from political stances to public spats and perceived contempt for Disney's most hallowed fairy tale. While it's still unclear how this fiasco will shape her long-term career, it certainly taught her, and any aspiring star, an unforgettable lesson in the perils of high-stakes Hollywood scrutiny. As Snow White sank at the box office, Disney's entire live-action strategy came under the microscope. After pumping out a steady stream of remakes, The Lion King, Mulan, Aladdin, and more, executives must have wondered if the well was finally running dry, or if they simply executed the Snow White adaptation poorly. Fans began asking if the studio's next rumored projects, including a live-action take on Tangled, were similarly doomed to incite controversy and diminishing returns. Then, to everyone's surprise, news broke that Disney was halting or delaying the planned Tangled remake. The film had allegedly been in active development with Michael Gracie, director of The Greatest Showman, involved at some level, and it was considered a sure bet for success. After all, Tangled remains one of Disney's modern hits with a beloved soundtrack and an easily marketable story. Putting that project on hold signaled something deeper than a one-off panic reaction. It suggested Disney might be re-evaluating the entire concept of do-overs, reboots, and reimaginings that have defined their release slate for nearly a decade. Speculation erupted across fan forums. Some insisted that Disney simply needed to regroup, refine their scripts, and approach these classics with more respect and authenticity. Others argued that too many live-action remakes in a short span dulled the novelty, turning what used to be special events, like Maleficent, into routine corporate plays. One camp suggested that the backlash from Snow White set a precedent for fans to no longer give Disney the benefit of the doubt when it comes to re-engineering old favorites. Then, there's a more dire perspective. Perhaps the days of each new princess remake being a guaranteed moneymaker are over. Disney, navigating a rapidly changing entertainment landscape, might need to pivot to original stories, or find a middle ground that doesn't so dramatically depart from the source material. that fans feel insulted. So, what does this mean for the House of Mouse and the timeless allure of fairy tales? If Snow White, arguably the definitive Disney classic, couldn't secure a robust box office in live-action form, is it time for the studio to question its entire business model of refurbishing beloved animations? Could the fiasco simply be a result of messy PR, misguided marketing, an ill-conceived script, and an unfortunate flurry of controversies? Or is it symptomatic of a deeper fatigue with reboots, especially when the reimagined versions seem to lack the spirit that made the originals iconic? Rachel Zegler's role in this saga remains both a lightning rod and a cautionary tale. She dared to speak her mind about a story many hold dear, and in doing so, she ignited a war of words on social media. Some hail her honesty, others find it heretical in the context of a Disney legacy. Whichever side you land on, her journey through this film's turbulent waters highlights how quickly today's fans and critics can unite or collide over a single piece of entertainment. And now, Tangled sits in limbo, possibly the first casualty of Disney's internal reckoning. Perhaps the studio will re-emerge with a refined strategy that both respects the beloved elements of their properties and updates them for new audiences without alienating old ones. Or maybe the entire wave of live-action reboots will slow to a crawl, replaced by fresh stories or safer sequels. In the end, we're left with a single question. Can Disney recapture the magic that once made it untouchable? Or has this avalanche of controversy shown that even a powerhouse can break its own spell? The answer may lie in the next chapter of the studio's evolution, one that forces them to look beyond big budgets and star power, returning to the heart of what made these fairy tales so enchanting in the first place. Because if an iconic property, like Snow White, can't guarantee a happily ever after, it might be time to rethink the entire formula.